Today I'm making a pepperoni pizza, but vegan. And to get started, let's have 2 cups or 250 grams of whole wheat flour. I happen to be using King Arthur whole wheat flour. And yes, I am making a whole wheat flour pizza dough. To that, to help with strengthening it and rise, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of vital wheat gluten. It's not mandatory, but I like to do it. I'm also going to add in a couple of good pinches of salt. Not too much, probably less than a teaspoon altogether. I have here 1 teaspoon of Fleischmann's active dry yeast, but any bread yeast that you like will work. Now I just want to give those dry ingredients a little bit of a mix. I'm going to add in 3/4 of a cup or 200 grams of water and stir to combine. It may start to seem like there's not enough liquid. Just trust me, keep going. At a certain point though, you just got to get it out onto the board. Scrape down your container. Get it all off your mixing utensil and get in there with your hands and a dough scraper like this if you need it. This makes what would be considered probably a large pizza in most pizza places. It's usually enough for Derek and myself if we make a salad to go along with it or something. And now we start the kneading process. This is where we form that gluten, and that's where the vital wheat gluten actually helps a bit. And the whole wheat flour will actually form gluten, but it's harder to get to because of the whole wheat. All the parts that are there that add all the good stuff, by the way, do make it a little bit more difficult. But with the addition of the vital wheat gluten, that problem is usually averted. I usually knead it for 5 to 10 minutes or so. I want to get really good, stretchy, smooth dough. Right now, it's even a little sticky. See, you might have been afraid that it was too dry. It might be a little bit too wet. If you do find that it's sticking to you too much, just a nice small handful of the flour should work just fine. After a few minutes, as you can see, we have a nice, smooth dough ball. I'm going to give it just another minute just to be on the safe side. I'll just form that into a nice ball. Drop it back into our container. Put the lid on and let it sit for 1 hour to proof. If you're going to have pizza, going to need some cheese. So for my pizza cheese, we're going to be taking 1.5 cups of cashew milk. But you can use pretty much any non-dairy milk you like, as long as it's unsweetened. 1 tablespoon lemon juice. Notice I'm putting everything right into a pot. This pot's going on my cooktop. 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm using pink Himalayan, but whatever kind of salt you like is good. And we have 2 kinds of starch for this one. 2 tablespoons of tapioca starch and 2 tablespoons of potato starch. If you don't have one or the other, you could substitute. Then I want to mix that up. Make sure there are no lumps. Once it's mixed up, that's the last you'll want the whisk. So let's just get this onto the burner, and we're going to put this to about medium, a little on the high side of medium. Mine goes to 5, so it's at 3.4. Get out your spatula, silicone preferably, or a silicone spoon if you like, but a spatula is going to be a little easier down the line, and start stirring. You want to just keep this moving. It'll cook down. This is much like my mozzarella cheese that we made for the Philly cheesesteak, where it's going to solidify very, very suddenly. In this case, we don't actually want it to fully solidify. We want it to stay a little bit more liquidous so it can be spread onto the pizza. One thing you don't want to do right now is walk away. This will burn before you even know it. So just stick around, spend a couple minutes. That's why there's not a lot in here. It's not going to take that long to heat up. Okay, we're starting to see some action in here now. If I scoop some up, you can see the lumps that are starting to form. That's what we're looking for. It'll start to, the starch is thickening the sauce, basically. And we're just going to keep stirring and keep mixing, get into those corners, make sure the whole thing gets mixed through so nothing sticks to the bottom and burns. You can see it thickening right before your eyes, right as you're doing it. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn the heat off completely and just let that carryover heat do the rest. And I have here a glass container, heat proof, that I'm going to put our cheese into for the time being. you can see, it has a much softer consistency than the cheese that we made for the other recipe, but that is intentional. It actually kind of resembles cream of wheat right now. And if you're wondering, I used cashew milk this time instead of whole cashews to keep the fat content down. Yes, fat is an important thing to me. I'm just going to let this sit off to the side for a little bit to cool off. While the dough is finishing up, let's talk toppings. One of my favorites is pepperoni, and this happens to be the pepperoni that we made the other day in a video. If you didn't see that one, I normally don't like to do that, oh, go watch this video to learn how to do this thing. So today, we are going to do it because this deserved its own video. And mushrooms. I mean, how can you go wrong with a couple of mushrooms? And then some onion. Love that. So let me just prepare these. Just put them all on a plate so I can get to them easy enough. All these ends and bits, these either go into compost or, in this case, we're probably going to use them to make veggie broth. I don't even think I'm going to need half this onion, but I'll get half of it ready. And to cut the onion for pizza, I usually just go about halfway like that and then just thin slices. Like bits. Rather than like longer pieces that just get stuck between bites. Yeah, it looks like half an onion's about just right for this pizza. I'm going to put our onions on the other side of our prep plate here. Before we get to the dough, let's set our oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the temperature that I like to cook my pizzas at, and here we are with the dough. As you can see, it's much, much larger than it was before. That's the idea. So I just want to get that out of there. Use the gravity method more or less. Now, it's soft, it's pliable, and there's gas in there. What we want to do is just make a pizza. We want to stretch this out. And there's lots of ways to do that. You can put it on your hands and do the flip up in the air thing. I tend to do a combination. I'll put it across my knuckles. I literally just have my hand closed underneath. I'm just giving it a little stretch as it goes around, trying to keep it circular if possible. Looking for a fairly thin dough. The other method that I'll do is sometimes I'll just slap it down like that and, give it a good stretch. It shouldn't stick to the board too badly. If you find that it does, add a little bit of extra flour. Some areas are always going to be a little thicker than others. I am not a perfect pizza maker. To me, if it looks rustic, it probably tastes better. At a certain point, though, I will just put it on my hands again and keep stretching. I don't want to break it in any way. Okay, it's starting to get really thin in the middle. Stretch those outside parts out. I'll just like dimple it and pull with my fingers a little bit. You can see it makes a pretty decent sized pizza. If you do break it at all, like there's a little piece right in the middle here that looks like it's about to break, I'm just going to grab some off that crust right there and just piece it together. Once there's cheese and sauce on there, you will never know the difference. At this point, I do want to get it onto a pizza tray, and I like to use parchment on my pizza tray. I know it's probably sacrilegious, but it actually helps for maneuvering the pizza later. This is going to be difficult to do on camera. I'm just going to grab it and put it on there and bring it back over. There we go. Just kind of get it situated. This area here feels a little bit thicker. Just a little bit of stretching. Keep it round if you can. Okay, and now I'm going to work around the outside just with my finger, something like this. Here, let me see if I can show you better. Just going to work around the edge with my finger, just to kind of make that little bit of crust. Totally optional. You don't have to. It just makes it look nice. Just push that guy right in. All good. Okay, so when it comes to sauce, I'm kind of minimalist when it comes to sauce. What I have here is some crushed tomatoes, and they are just Tutto Rosso crushed tomatoes, no salt added, no big deal. I also have a large spoon. This can is about half full because I made pizza the other day, and we're doing it again just for you. I just like to take some dollops of crushed tomato and place them around the pizza. Usually 5 to 6 works well, and then I start spreading it out with the spoon from the center to the outside. I like to keep it thinnest in the center because it seems like that's where the sogginess comes from, and we don't want it to be soggy. You do not want to over sauce your pizza. That is a serious issue that a lot of people do. Just want to spread it just to maybe a 1/4 inch from that crust. And yes, these were just crushed tomatoes right from the can, nothing else in them yet. Then on top of that, I have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to put that in my hand, start sprinkling that around. Okay, some black pepper, probably a 1/2 teaspoon or so, just all over the top of that sauce. I have a teaspoon of garlic powder, much the same thing. I'm just going to start spreading it around. It becomes like a feel thing. See, a teaspoon might have been too much. Put some back. Same thing for onion powder. A few good pinches. Maybe a 1/4 teaspoon is all I really needed. Of course, if you like more seasoning, use more seasoning. I have a teaspoon of oregano. I can already tell that's going to probably be too much for this iced pizza. 1/2 teaspoon probably would have been fine. Basil. I'm not even going to dump it out because I already know. I like to make my sauce this way. It just seems to work out really well for me. And then this is some thyme. Very herby on the pizza. I like it that way. And then we have crushed red pepper flake. This is to taste. I feel pizza needs just that touch of spice. Without it, it doesn't taste quite right. And I had a 1/2 teaspoon in here. Not sure if I'm going to use the whole 1/2 teaspoon or not. No, doesn't look like it. Just a little bit. Next up is our cheese. Now for this, I'm just going to take a spoon and kind of make little slices of it. It comes off kind of gloopy, a little bit liquidy sometimes. You don't want it too thick. That's the idea. Just get little blobs here and there. Think of it like buffalo mozzarella. Just little pieces, however much you like on your pizza. So you can put a lot on there if you want to. Just remember, it's not going to melt exactly the same as, say, a commercial vegan cheese, and certainly not as nice as a real cheese would. Tend to get a little dirty when I'm doing this. Okay, we're just about done with the cheese. One thing I'd like to say, if you let the cheese sit overnight or get really cold, it will actually gel up a little bit more, and that way you can cut it a little bit easier and get it onto the pizza a little easier. That is one way to do it. I just kind of like to spread it around a little bit and get it all in there. It looks a little bit more like real cheese once it melts up, but anyway, we're done with the cheese. Next up is the pepperoni. Now for this, I have a little bit of that wheat starch on the bottom side of these. I'm going to put that on the bottom so that way the nicer looking side is up on top. And I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 pieces. Exactly. Look at that. Put one across the middle, do the 4 sides. And then we just got a couple more pieces to spread around. It's your pizza. Apply it how you want. Of course, if you want more or less of any of these things, just put more or less of any of them on. Next, mushrooms and onions. These I just kind of scatter them. You know, you just get it on there. Don't have to be too prissy about it. And of course, you can use any toppings that you really like for your pizza. Just the trick is don't over topping the pizza. I'm borderline too much on this one already. But when you don't have a real mozzarella cheese, I feel that more toppings actually works a little bit in your favor. It takes your mind off the fact that you're not eating actual cheese. Okay, I'll just be honest. That's pretty much how I feel about it. I do have a sprayer of oil here, and I just want to give a light coating on top of basically everything, the pepperoni especially. But that little bit of oil, even though I don't like to cook with oil, does actually help the pepperoni cook up a little bit nicer, gives it a little bit more of a realistic feel. And now our pizza is ready to go into the oven. I usually go about 20 minutes and then I check on it. After about 20 to 25 minutes, I transferred this pizza from the parchment and tray to a peel, and then I put it on my pizza steel in my oven. If you don't have a pizza steel in your oven, you can just remove the parchment paper and leave it on whatever tray you happen to be cooking it on. It'll work out just fine. I do that just to brown the crust a little bit. But anyway, we now have our pizza. Time to cut into this and see how we did. First thing I want to say is, this is lava hot. This is super extraordinarily hot. You do not want to put this into your mouth quite yet. Okay, pretty pictures have been taken. The pizza's cooled for a few minutes. It's time to take a bite. Gotta get all the leavings, as my wife calls them. Look at that though, that is gorgeous. There we go. I think I need a second opinion. This is amazing. The crust actually is really, really nice. It's not dry like you'd expect a whole wheat crust to be. It's actually quite nice. It rose nicely. The pepperoni adds such a nice little spicy bite to it. It's incredible. The cheese is gooey and melty a little bit. Works fantastically. And then all the herbs and everything in the sauce just makes for a very, very flavorful bite of pizza. Go ahead and make this. It's really not that hard. Takes a little bit of prep, a little bit of work, but you can do it. I believe in you. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Bistro.